Hey guys, Rachele here with Amethyst Ascension, and today we are going to, because it's Thursday, we are going to, sorry, let me put this, there we go, maybe that's a little bit better. I am starting to pick the items that we are going to work on for this tutorial. Things that you're going to want in front of you are some fire line, I am going to work with the darker simply because the colors that I have chosen to work with are a little bit darker in nature. So I'm going to work with the black so it's not as easy to see the line. Although it is very thin, you still might be able to see it if you get a really, really close look. What I have done is taken the E6000 glue and put it on the back of my cabochon, and you can see it's still attached. So what I'm going to do next is cut that off. Let me see if this is going to work. I'm just taking regular scissors. Let me prop you up a little bit. Not sure how I can do this. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so here, let me bring this over. I had it on the side because I'm not going to be able to sew through the camera, which is right in front of me. But this part I can do. So I'm just going to cut it, giving myself an ample amount. And I'll show you when I'm done. So giving myself about this much. I'm using a little bit bigger of a cabochon. Just so I actually have, there we go, that's a little bit better. I mean, I know you can see the stand, but that's okay. I'm using, like I said, a little bit bigger a cabochon. That way it's easier to actually see what I'm doing rather than a very small one, which the more and more you practice, you'll be able to go really, really small with not a problem. And they actually go a lot faster. But for demonstration purposes and for tutorial purposes, I figured working with something larger would be better. Ideally, after putting your E6000 on the back of it, you want to let it cure for about 24 hours. But because I was so busy yesterday, I forgot to do that. So we're just going to power through it. But ideally, it's better to, you know, however many you want to work with, just go ahead and do these the day before you're going to start your project. Okay? Now, as you can see, I have a lot of seed beads. These are all, move this. These are all little tubes. Oops. And then we have other ones here. These are different sizes and longer tubes. These are like a hodgepodge. And then I have a bunch of loose ones here. So I don't expect anybody. I have to use this in order to prop it up because my light doesn't want to work properly. So anyways, let me put this back on here. And get you back over here. So here is one of the needles. Beetle on. Or John James. They come in like a pouch. That's what I'm using. Like I showed you, the eye is so tiny. But you know, since before I started, they didn't have tons of really good beading needles. Now, when I looked on Fire Mountain Gems, they actually do have some really good ones that the whole thing just opens. You can put your thread through it and then close it up. That works perfectly. I just don't have any, and I'm going to use what I have. So, but for anyone starting out, it's much easier than what I had started off with. So right now, I'm going to grab about an arm length, and then I'm going to cut the end off. Okay. And I probably should not have used those scissors. I should use my other ones that are tiny and better for beading, which you can get them right from, you know, Joanna Fabrics. You can get them from Michael's. You can get them from Fire Mountain Gems. Pretty much any crafting place that does also sewing, you can get that. Now, I showed you, or I told you, that I was going to show you an easy way to thread your needle. Now, we'll see how easy it is, because it's been quite a long time for me. So, what you want to do is put the end of it right in between your fingers, like so. Then you want to take your beading needle at the end where the eye is, knowing where you put it in between your fingers, and just let your fingers be the guide. Now I say that, and watch, it's not working. No, I'm just having one heck of a time. There we go. All right. So you just want to leave yourself a little tail. You're not tying it off or anything. Just leave yourself a little tail. And what I do is just tuck it into my fingers and the creases of my finger. Now, another reason you're going to want to take it easy and be very careful, and also actually kind of use the heat that comes from your palm and from the inside of your fingers to keep your needle more pliable. Don't be alarmed if your needle actually gets bent and curved. That's very common. And that's actually what you want. Some beading needles actually come curved because you're putting stress on them. So you really, really want to baby them, because it's easy to go through needles. So what you're going to do to begin with is right at the edge. If you turn it over, you can see the outline. You see the outline? So you're going to come up right as close to the edge of the cabochon as you can get. See? Now, I normally start off with 2 arm lengths of thread. However, when you're just getting started, it's not so easy to manipulate that much thread. Eventually, and if you're somebody that already works with needle and thread, you probably won't have a problem, and you can go ahead. Now, what I do is I go right next to, let me show you, where I originally came in, and I go back down through. As you can see, I left a little tail in the back, because just like any other sewing, we're going to tie off our string. So now, I'm just going to lay this down a second. Use as much string as you can get away with not using that much. That just gives you more string for whatever project you're working on. Okay, that's enough, guys. Sully, come lay down by Mama, honey. Leave the kitty cat alone. He doesn't like you. So you can tie it off 2 times. Just a regular stitch, just a regular knot. Okay, so now it's tied off, right? So now you're going to pick up your needle again. And you're going to come back up right by where you, as a matter of fact, you can actually even come behind it so that you're covering it. It's not going to matter, you'll see. Okay. All right, so we've come back through. We're tied off on the back side, like so. And on the front, we are ready to slowly get out of the cat's food. All right, so now let's set that aside just for a second. I want to show you the seed beads that I chose for this project. We're going to start off with a little bit larger size seed bead. That's going to be my first round that I go with. You just lay it right down. My next one, I believe, is going to be this one. But we'll get to that. And you'll see why I do different sizes. And I'm going to make this a focal point for a necklace. So I'm going to also use bugle beads that I talked about for fringe, as well as it's always good to have a bead in between fringes. Not only does it give it a little bit of visual interest and depth, but it also, bugle beads can be quite sharp on the ends because of the way that they're cut. So if they get bent, if you don't have something to kind of cushion it, it can break off, eventually wear off your thread. So it's always better to kind of cushion it with another seed bead, because these are rounded off. Okay, so what we're going to do next is I am going to pick up with my needle 4 beads. Okay, I'm going to run them all the way to the end of my string, like so. Now you see what I've done here? Sully, do you want to go upstairs, buddy? I don't want to have to do that, but I will. Ah, the joys of furry parenthood. Okay, so if you can see, I'm going to go just above where this is. See? And then I'm going to pull it through to the back side. Like so. Now what I'm going to do is come up from the back side, right about, do you see? Where there's right in the center between the 2 or the 4. So like right around the second bead, right after the second bead and before the third bead. And you're going to pull it through tight again. Oh. There we go. And you got to be careful. Do everything slowly because your cord can easily get tangled in the back. And then you don't want to have to. So now that I've done that, you see I'm coming through. Then I'm going to go back through the 2 last beads, 3 and 4 again. And you're going to want to guide your string on the inside, okay? So you just laid your 4 beads around it. You're going to continue in that fashion all the way around. So you're going to pick up 4 beads again, because at that point you should be coming out of your last bead again. So you're going to pick up 4 more beads. You're going to push them all the way. The reason you push them all the way is, sorry, let me try to turn this a little bit. The reason you want to push them all the way aside is, or all the way down, is so that you have a good gauge of where you need to go into your felt again. So I'm running it all the way through. And then I'm going to bring it up again as close to the inside part of the cabochon as I can. And in between the second and the third bead that you just put down there. And I'm going to go right back on through the third and fourth bead again. I'll do that a couple more times, and then I'm going to, I suppose I could speed it up. It's not something that I've messed with yet, so if I can't figure that out in editing, then I'm just going to cut it so that this is not like an extremely long video. Oh, the joys of parenthood. I love my Sully. You see, as I'm pulling it, you want to pull it taut after every time. It does not have to be extremely tight. You want it to be where it lays down nicely. You can start to see it on the side where it's forming. Another reason you want to start off with a large seed bead. You don't have to. It depends on what you're doing. But let me just move this because it keeps getting caught on it. But because the next line that we do of seed beads is going to be on the inside of this, and it's going to be smaller, and you still want to be able to see this bead as well. Now, I will say one other thing. When you're putting your beads in, with your thread, you're going to want to go a little bit in front of, rather than getting it behind the beads. Because if you get it in front of, then it'll kind of kink them a little bit, if you understand what I mean. Come on. See, like right here, I've come a little bit behind the third bead, and I'm coming up. That way it doesn't bunch it up when I'm coming back behind here and going back through the third and fourth bead that I just laid. And when I lay my next 4, which I've just grabbed 4, and I run them all the way. Now, see what I mean? You don't want to get right up on it. Give yourself a little bit of leeway. Let's see. Let's see if I can show you. It's so hard with the camera. A little bit before. so that as it lays it down flat going forward instead of bunches it up because you accidentally got behind the bead where the bead should fall. And if you're back a little farther, it doesn't really matter because you're going back in. I mean, you don't have to get so technical that you're worried about where you're putting every stitch. The beads really are very forgiving. Okay, so that's what we have so far. I am going to pause this because we are already at 20 minutes. And then I am going to pick up when I have finished it off and show you what to do there. Okay, so I put it back this way and I'm hoping that you can see this maybe a little bit better. So we are getting to the end of our first circle and there's only enough room for 3. So I'm going to do 3. Now, you see where the string is from the first one? I'm going to actually go just in between that. And I'm going to pull all the way through. Now I'm going to come back to 2 more. Sorry. Pull it tight. I'm going to actually go through 2 of them again. Now, as you see, I'm going through these all the way down. So now what I'm going to do, now that I've completed the first circle, I'm just going to keep on going around inside of the beads. And I'm going to fill the hollow of these to secure it even better. Ay, caramba. So you're just going to want to keep going around and fill it maybe like, well, as much as your cord will allow it. Especially these, oops, here I am, just throwing it around. Make sure I'm still underneath of that. So essentially all you're doing is just getting it nice and secure, and pull it taut every time you run it through a little bit further. You want to keep your beads, it'll keep them creating that circle form. So I'm going to pause it again and I'm going to go through this at least probably like 4 or 5 more times to circle it, and then I will show you after that. Okay, so I've gotten to the point, I've gone through this probably about five times, and it's really good and tight around it. Not too tight where they're crunching up, but tight enough. And what I've done is turned it over. This is what the back should look like. So I've turned it over so I can see it. And what I'm going to do, I've decided to end it here. I still have enough cord, but I don't want to go through it too much because you're going to go through it again as you're sewing it around the edges. So you don't want your bead filled all the way up. You still want to have leeway. So I'm going to go through it to the back right here. And you see, I'm pretty much across from where my other one was, where I tied it off. That's why you don't want to cut these off. So now I'm going to actually take these scissors, make sure I'm in the frame. I'm going to cut this down. I'm going to move that aside, and I am going to tie this off from across, almost as if you were like tying your shoes and making a knot first. You want it to be tight, but it doesn't have to be super tight. Like I said, you don't have to get nitpicky about it. The whole process is actually very forgiving. So I'm going to actually do it one more time. And then I've tied that off. So now I'm just going to cut it shorter. Keep in mind, this isn't regular thread. It's like fireline, meaning it's a little bit tougher. It's like fishing line, you know. Okay, so that's your first row. Now to do your second row, I'll make another video so it's not too long.